Welcome back, everybody, to the Deep Dive. This time we're taking a look at AI and education.
Right.
I think this is one of those topics that is really on everyone's mind right now.
It is.
It feels very, very future forward. And it's interesting to think about, how this is actually going to play out in the real world.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've got a ton of research here, articles, everything, talking about AI's potential to really kind of reshape learning as we know it.
It's pretty remarkable how much material is out there already.
Yeah.
And you know what I find fascinating is this isn't just about adding some cool gadgets to the classroom.
Right.
We're talking about AI that can actually figure out how each student learns best, what they're struggling with, and even predict what they might need help with next.
Okay, so that sounds like a super tutor.
It is.
That never gets tired.
Exactly.
Of explaining things.
Yeah.
How does that even work, though? I mean, are we talking robots?
Not quite robots in the classroom. But imagine a computer program that can watch how you're solving math problems, for example.
Okay.
And it notices where you hesitate or where you make mistakes.
Uh-huh.
And then it uses that information to adjust the next lesson so you get more practice on the things that you're struggling with.
Okay.
This isn't sci-fi either.
Right.
There are platforms out there like Carnegie Learning that are already using this type of AI to create those personalized learning paths for students.
Okay, so instead of everybody in the classroom learning the same thing at the same time.
Exactly.
You have AI that can kind of tailor the experience to each student.
Absolutely.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, and some of these platforms even use something called reinforcement learning.
Okay.
Have you heard of that?
Not sure.
So basically, it's a trial and error system for the AI.
Okay.
Where it kind of learns by getting feedback on its actions.
Right.
So in this case, the action is how it presents the information or designs the exercises for the student. And then the feedback is how the student performs on those exercises.
Got it.
So it's constantly learning and improving based on that feedback loop.
That is fascinating.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering about the teachers in all of this.
Right. Okay.
I mean, if AI is doing all this teaching and potentially even grading what's left for the teachers to do.
That's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
A lot of people are worried about AI replacing teachers altogether.
Right.
But I think the reality is that AI is probably going to become a really powerful tool for teachers.
Okay.
Not a replacement.
Okay.
So think about all the administrative tasks that take up so much of a teacher's time.
Right.
Grading, creating progress reports, lesson planning. AI could potentially handle a lot of that, which would free up teachers to do what they do best, which is mentor, inspire, and connect with their students on a deeper level.
So they kind of become more like learning coaches, guiding students through their own kind of personalized learning journey.
Yeah. So instead of standing at the front of the classroom and lecturing, they can spend more time working with individual students, addressing their specific needs and really helping them develop those critical thinking skills that are going to be so important in the future.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Right.
But I have to imagine that there are potential downsides too. I mean, we're talking about handing over a lot of control to AI. That must come with some risks.
Right. Absolutely, there are risks.
What are we seeing in the research about that?
So one of the biggest concerns that comes up again and again is the amount of data that these systems need to be effective.
Right.
We're talking about really detailed information about a student's learning habits, their strengths, their weaknesses, even their emotional responses to different teaching methods.
Wow, that's a lot of data.
It is a lot of data.
And there are real privacy concerns here.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
If all that information is being collected and analyzed, how do we make sure that it's being used responsibly and not falling into the wrong hands?
Exactly.
That's a really important question that a lot of researchers are grappling with right now.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are advocating for really strict data privacy policies that are designed specifically for AI in education.
Okay.
They argue that, this data should be treated with the same level of care and protection as medical records.
Okay, that sounds like a good starting point.
It's a good starting point.
Are there other potential issues or pitfalls that we should be thinking about?
Well, technology is never perfect, right? So another challenge is making sure that these systems are designed with fairness and inclusivity in mind. Because the last thing we want is for AI to accidentally amplify the inequalities that already exist in education.
Can you give me an example of what that might look like?
Sure. So imagine an AI system that's been trained primarily on data from students in well-funded schools.
Okay.
It might unintentionally develop biases that disadvantage students from under-resourced schools.
Right.
Or students from backgrounds that are underrepresented in the data that it was trained on.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
So it sounds like while the potential benefits are super exciting,
yes,
there's a lot of ethical
yes.
and practical considerations
absolutely
to work out.
It's a bit of a tightrope walk.
Yeah.
You could say that?
Yeah, but I mean, assuming we can figure all that out,
right?
What might the classroom of the future actually look like?
Okay, so let's put aside the image of robots lecturing from behind a desk.
Okay, good, because that was kind of freaking me out.
Yeah, it's a little creepy.
Yeah.
So think more along the lines of a really dynamic and interactive learning environment where instead of textbooks, you have individual devices that adapt to each student's learning style and pace.
So no more rows of desks.
Maybe not
facing a chalkboard?
Maybe rows of desks facing a chalkboard.
Okay.
Instead, picture flexible spaces that encourage collaboration and hands-on learning. So maybe one student's working independently on their device.
Okay.
Another group is collaborating on a virtual reality project.
And did you say virtual reality?
Yeah.
That sounds like...
It does sound futuristic.
Straight out of a sci-fi movie.
It does, but virtual reality is actually already being used in some classrooms.
Wow.
I mean, imagine taking a virtual field trip to the Amazon rainforest in your biology class. Or exploring ancient Rome in your history class.
Yeah.
I mean, the level of immersion can make learning so much more engaging and memorable.
Okay, now that you mention it, I'm starting to get pretty excited about this.
Yeah.
But what about the teachers?
Yeah.
Where do they fit into this high tech?
That's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So we got to take a break, but we're going to come back and talk about exactly where the teachers fit in.
We'll dive into that.
All right, everybody, we'll be back in a moment. So where do teachers fit into this high-tech classroom you're describing? It sounds like their role could change dramatically.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think we could see a pretty big shift from the traditional, sage on the stage to something more like a guide on the side.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
Guide on the side. So less about lecturing and more about helping students develop those critical thinking skills.
Exactly.
Problem solving, all that kind of stuff they'll need to thrive in a world.
Especially in a world that's going to be increasingly shaped by AI.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And we can't forget about the human connection, right?
Oh, absolutely.
The mentorship. I mean, AI might be able to provide personalized instruction.
Yeah.
But it can't replace the empathy and emotional intelligence of a good teacher.
It can't replace that human connection.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what inspires students, helps them develop a love of learning.
Absolutely.
It makes me wonder, too, if AI could actually help teachers better understand their students' individual needs.
You're thinking about all that data we were talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Couldn't it be used to give teachers insights?
Oh, absolutely.
That they wouldn't have otherwise?
AI can analyze huge amounts of data about each student's learning patterns, strengths, weaknesses, even their emotional responses to different teaching methods.
Wow.
And that could give teachers a level of insight that's just not possible with traditional methods.
So it's not just about personalizing the learning of students.
It's about personalizing the teaching as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
It is.
But I also imagine that having access to so much data could be overwhelming for teachers.
It could be.
How do we make sure that they're equipped to use it effectively?
Well, teacher training is going to be absolutely crucial in this new landscape.
Okay.
We need to make sure that educators have the skills to interpret all that data, identify the trends, and make informed decisions about how to use AI effectively in their classrooms.
So it's not just about learning to use the technology.
No.
It's about understanding what it's telling you.
It's about understanding the data.
Right.
Yeah. And also understanding the limitations of AI.
Okay.
AI is a tool. It's not a magic bullet.
Right.
It can't solve every problem in education.
Of course not.
And it can't replace the judgment and experience of a skilled teacher.
Right. And I think it's important to emphasize, this isn't about replacing teachers with robots.
Absolutely not.
This is about giving teachers new tools and insights.
To do their job even better.
To create a more engaging and effective learning environment for all students.
Yeah. And we also have to remember that this is still a very young field.
Right.
This technology is evolving so rapidly. We're only just beginning to understand what AI can really do in education.
Yeah, it's exciting to think about what the future holds. But let's bring it back down to earth for a moment.
Okay.
What are some of the practical challenges of actually implementing AI in education on a large scale?
Well, one of the biggest hurdles is going to be access to resources.
Okay.
You know, these systems can be really expensive to develop and implement.
Right.
And not every school has the budget or the infrastructure to support that.
So there's a risk that the benefits of AI could be unevenly distributed.
There is.
And potentially widen the gap between,
unfortunately,
well-funded and under-resourced schools.
That's why it's so important to make sure that any effort to integrate AI into education is guided by those principles of equity and accessibility.
Right.
I have to make sure that all students have the opportunity to benefit from these advancements, regardless of their background or the resources available at their school.
Absolutely. And that brings up a lot of questions about funding, policy, even the digital divide that already exists.
Yeah, there's a real need for collaboration here, you know, between educators, policymakers, and tech developers to make sure that AI is implemented responsibly and equitably.
Okay, so let's step back from the big picture for a second and talk about some specific examples of how AI is already being used in classrooms today. What are some real-world applications that are showing promise?
Well, one area where we're seeing a lot of innovation is in personalized learning platforms. You know, these systems use AI algorithms to assess students' strengths and weaknesses, tailor instruction to their needs, and provide real-time feedback.
Can you give me an example?
Sure. Imagine a student using an AI-powered math program. As they work through problems, the system is analyzing their responses, identifying areas where they're struggling, adjusting the difficulty level. And if the student gets stuck, the system can provide hints, offer different explanations, or even suggest additional practice problems.
So it's like having a personalized tutor. Available 24/7. That's pretty amazing.
It is.
What other applications are you seeing?
Another really interesting area is the use of AI for language learning. There are apps now that use natural language processing to analyze a student's speech and provide feedback on pronunciation, grammar, vocabulary.
So like having a conversation partner that can actually correct you.
Exactly. And these systems are getting more sophisticated all the time. Some of them can even adapt to different accents and dialects.
That's incredible.
So they're really effective for language learners all over the world.
This is all really fascinating.
It is.
But I can't help but think about, you know, the potential for misuse or even unintended consequences. We talked about data privacy and bias, but are there any other ethical concerns that we should be thinking about?
One concern that some researchers have raised is the potential for AI to create a sense of dependence or even addiction in students.
Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. Imagine a student who becomes so reliant on an AI tutor that they lose the ability to learn independently or think critically for themselves. Or a student who becomes so obsessed with getting high scores on an AI-powered platform that they lose sight of the joy of learning for its own sake.
So it's about finding that right balance between leveraging the technology and preserving that human element.
It's a delicate balance for sure. But I think we need to be mindful of the potential risks while also embracing the incredible opportunities that AI presents.
Okay, so let's dream big for a minute. If we could wave a magic wand and create the ideal AI-powered learning environment, what would it look like?
In this ideal world, every student would have access to a personalized learning pathway that's tailored to their individual needs and interests.
So no more one-size-fits-all.
Exactly. Each student's journey would be unique. Guided by a combination of AI-powered tools and the expertise of human teachers.
And what about the classroom itself?
Yeah, I'm picturing a really dynamic and flexible space that encourages collaboration, creativity, hands-on learning. There might be areas for individual study group projects, even virtual reality experiences.
So a far cry from the rows of desks and the chalkboard.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And teachers would have access to real-time data and insights about each student's progress.
Gotcha.
So they can provide that personalized support and guidance.
It sounds like a truly personalized learning experience.
It is.
One that empowers both students and teachers.
Yeah, that's the vision.
That's amazing.
Of course, there are challenges to overcome before we can fully realize this.
Of course.
But the potential is there.
Yeah.
And it's exciting to think about what the future might hold.
Well, I'm definitely convinced that AI has the potential to completely revolutionize education.
Me too.
But as we've discussed,
it's not a simple solution.
It's not plug and play.
No.
It requires a lot of planning.
Thoughtful implementation. Ongoing dialogue.
Yeah.
About those ethical implications.
I think as we wrap up this deep dive into AI and education, I'm left with a sense of excitement.
Yeah.
But also, a healthy dose of cautious optimism.
I share that sentiment.
Yeah.
The potential is huge, but we need to proceed with care and awareness.
If you had to distill everything we've talked about into one key takeaway, what would it be?
I'd say the most important thing is to approach AI in education with a critical but hopeful mindset. Don't shy away from the challenges or the ethical considerations, but don't let fear or skepticism overshadow the potential that this technology has to personalize learning and empower both students and teachers.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
It's about embracing innovation, but also staying grounded in our values and our commitment to equity and inclusivity.
Absolutely.
It really does feel like we've only just scratched the surface here.
Yeah, we have.
AI in education is such a vast and rapidly evolving field.
It is, and that's what makes it so fascinating.
Yeah.
I mean, we're basically watching the birth of a whole new era in education.
Wow.
One that has the potential to completely transform how we teach and learn.
So for our listeners out there who are, just as intrigued by all of this as we are, what's one thing they can do to stay informed and engaged?
Well, I'd encourage everyone to just keep learning and asking questions. Read articles, listen to podcasts like this one, and really engage in those conversations about AI's potential. Both the benefits and the challenges. I think the more informed we are as a society, the better equipped we'll be to actually shake the future of learning.
And this isn't just a conversation for educators and tech experts.
No, it's not.
This is something that affects all of us.
It does.
Whether we're parents, students, or just concerned citizens.
Absolutely. The future of education is something that we all have a stake in.
Yeah.
And the decisions that we make today are going to have a ripple effect for generations to come.
Well, after this deep dive, I'm feeling a real mix of excitement and, kind of a healthy dose of awe.
Yeah.
It's amazing to think about how much potential AI has.
It is.
To transform education.
I agree. And while there are definitely going to be challenges, I'm optimistic that we can use this technology to create a more equitable, more engaging, and ultimately more human-centered learning experience for everyone.
I think that's a great place to wrap up this episode of The Deep Dive.
Sounds good.
We've covered so much today, from personalized learning to the ethical considerations.
It's been a fascinating conversation.
Yeah.
I hope our listeners found it informative and thought-provoking.
Thank you all for joining us on this journey into the world of AI and education.
Thanks for having me.
Until next time, keep those minds curious, stay engaged, and never stop learning.